tonight is the 16th Annual Legacy Lecture. This idea came about in 2008 when Jean Kirsch, who was a graduate of biology department here, went on to Stanford Medical School, and when Judith Weir went after, they were willing to give money to the university, Jean said she wanted to come back and talk. So she came back and spoke in 2008, and we thought it was a great idea to have a lecture series such as this that would honor an alum every year. So the first year was Grace Scheibel, and I did remember everybody, but not in chronological order. So we have had Grace Scheibel, Neil Davis, Joe Usabelli Sr., Neil Brown, Willie Hensley, Ann Tremorello, Karen Farr, Helen Atkinson, Patrick O'Neill, Steve Frank, Nancy Cook Hansen, Mary Erlander, Joe Heckman, Vera Alexander, Dermot, and Terrence Cole. Okay, that's the lineup. So all of these people, you're nodding your head, and you know them. And the people that are back there are seats all around. Come on in. Okay? Come on in. We've got seats up front. The beauty of the Legacy Lecture is because you have heard and will continue to hear people in their own words. I mean, many of us go to these fundraisers where they honor somebody and somebody tells you about that person. But with Robert Hannon doing the interviewing, we hear it in their own words, and that gets saved. And like we have Nancy Cook Hansen right here, she was one of them. So we have a legacy. And even though Grace is no longer with us, and Neil Brown and Neil Davis are no longer with us, or Joe Usabelli Sr. are no longer with us, we have them tell stories in their own words, which you would never get otherwise. I remember Shirley Gordon, and Shirley Gordon has wonderful stories to tell, and she didn't want to do it, and then we sat here and we laughed so hard because of the stories that she shared with us. But enough about me. The only way this whole program could happen is my friend Robert Hannon. It would not have happened. He's been with me every sense of the way. He sometimes shakes his head, but eventually we work together and some good things. And so with tonight, with Robert's help, we're honoring another one of our own who graduated from the university. And we are absolutely delighted to have Tim Doran with us. And we're going to hear all about him thanks to Robert.
Thanks for the kind words. I'll give you that 15 later. If you all know Tim, and I know you all know Tim, what you hear here on the stories is just a fraction of what he has to convey and tell. So I can't claim to have plumbed his depth, because I don't know if that's possible. But afterwards, there's Q&A. So I want to hear the real stories. But sit back and enjoy this video.
Thanks for joining me.
It's my pleasure.
You know, I know you're from the Bronx, or as Woody Allen would say, the old country. Tell me what it was like growing up there.
You know, I think that one of the words that struck me is walking. When I think about growing up in the Bronx, I walked tremendous areas of the Bronx. It wasn't unlikely for us to walk, we were probably 3 or 4 miles from Orchard Beach, and could go there and go fishing in the little inlet and the creeks and stuff, and bring fish home to put in a fish tank sometimes. It wasn't fishing to eat, it was just getting, walking the beach there or whatever. Walking down to what effectively might be called a swamp, but it had big open dry fields where people flew model airplanes.
No kidding.
And we would run to recover them when they landed in the mush or whatever, you know. And then our prize was we got to keep the propeller because that was broken. While that was going on.
Yeah.
You know, going down to the creek to go crabbing. Saturday mornings, oftentimes a friend and I would walk to Van Cortlandt Park, major park where there was a lake, there were cross-country running trails, and so lots of trails in the woods. There were major fields where people came to play cricket or rugby or soccer.
It sounds
football,
more rural
things
than
like
I
that.
think of.
Well, at that time, this was in the 50s. You know, it was definitely not rural,
Yeah.
but there were big pockets of open area.
So you come from a large multi-generational family. Tell me about that.
Okay, so we were basically a family of 9. We had, my parents had 6 kids, 3 girls, 3 boys. We had the girls, the boys, and the children, one of each. Then, of course, my parents and my great aunt. My dad had been raised by his great aunts, too, from really the age of 3.
Wow.
Then one of them died when I was a baby, so I really only knew one, Aunt Kate. What was fascinating, I mean, I absolutely enjoyed her. She had her own room, and so sometimes, you know, going in to visit when we came back from school or just came in the house, we'd go visit her. And hearing her stories and stuff over time. But the big one of the big memories I have for Aunt Kate is that she used to get visitors, you know, maybe at holidays, but other just random times during the year, and they'd always bring a gift and they'd visit with her, etc. And it was kind of like, well, where are these people coming from? Who are they? And stuff. And what I learned over some time is my great aunts, Aunt Ann and Aunt Kate, when they had immigrated from Ireland, set themselves up in New York. They started a laundry business. They cleaned drapes, curtains, linens for the hotels. And actually, my father part of his job, as he was a little bit older, was to get on his bicycle and return them to the hotels. And
Wait, return the drapes on his bicycle?
right. He would
Wow.
they'd do the laundry, he would take them and such. But they also, just as people came from the old country, and they needed a place, you know, my 2 great aunts would take them in.
Wow.
And that was often the first place where, while, you know, they got a job and then got a place to stay of their own, and so they'd move off and somebody else would come.
That's so interesting you say that, because I'm wondering, do you think your life's been characterized by service and leadership? I think it's fair to say as we go through. Do you think that example of your aunts and your family modeled those virtues, if you will?
In retrospect, I would have to say yes. There are certainly, those are some of the kernels, the seeds that are there. A lot of people I knew who just took care of whatever it was. And I say that more in retrospect, as going through it, it was, I guess, what I was exposed to. And even the question makes me stop and think. Yes, they had an impact. How my parents treated others, whether it was as simple as, I'm thinking, you know, you talk about the Bronx, life in the Bronx, Halloween. If you came to the front door of the house, that was fine. But if you were anyone in the neighborhood, you, as a kid, you came to the back door of the house and you got freshly baked cookies or cupcakes or something that was fresh,
Yeah.
you know, and stuff.
For people who know you, I think they'd be surprised to learn that early on, you got a job at a bank and were seriously thinking of banking as a career. And tell me about that piece.
So my first job, full-time job, was on a dairy farm.
No kidding.
I got 14.5 cents an hour. I think I figured it out, and all I could eat, and fresh milk.
Fresh milk.
So, but then that was going away to Vermont. Finding a job in the city, it turned out my dad had a connection during the 1940s. He had worked for this bank as a lawyer. He knew some people. He said, well, let me call and see if they need anybody. I became their first summer help in the bank.
How old were you then? Tom, do you
I
think?
was a freshman in high school.
Okay.
And from there, I wound up working every summer, every vacation with the bank until I was into my 20s out of college. So that was, and I loved it.
What did you like about it?
A lot of it had to do with the relationships. You know, I started in the mailroom, and then I moved to become a teller. And so I kept moving up in that. I loved banking. I loved the people. My teller line, sometimes actually was the longest line because I also talk a lot. Surprise. And you know, and that was a significant impact on me when we talk about service or, you know.
But that
that's what they
experience
did.
in the bank ultimately changed your major and emphasis in college, didn't it?
Yes, I went to college with the idea of going into political science. Okay, what I was really going to do with it, I don't know. But the banking led me into switching to economics, and then that was where I was going to go. And I thought someday I'm going to be a bank president. That was my trajectory.
Yeah.
That was what I
Yeah.
What changed then, but again, great credit to the bank. It was also in the 60s, time of the draft. And in college, we were in the first, you know, I had classmates who wound up getting drafted, but then they also had the first lottery draft.
No.
I was in
Sure.
that.
I was part of that too.
Okay, number 93, and so I had a low number, and I really had to think, oh, this isn't just a theoretical thing. I really need to think, where do I stand? And long story short, I'm a conscientious objector. Went through that process. But I also, and I have to say, recruiting officers were phenomenal in terms of my opportunity to talk with them, military recruiter, about their experiences, about, I needed to answer the question for myself.
Sure.
Am I a conscientious objector? Or am I a little bit hesitant about going? Really, what's the truth thing? I believe in universal service and that opportunity. And so there was no question in my mind that I was going to do alternative service. Once I got my status, I got my notice that if my number was called, I'd have to be ready to report in an approved position, non-combatant type of position or volunteer position, within 3 months. So looking around for options, and I looked at a lot of different groups, I came upon the Jesuit Volunteer Corps.
Tell me about
College
that
I
program.
went to was a Jesuit college, Moyne College in Syracuse, New York. So it was a natural to get some information. And it was a program based out of Portland, Oregon, primarily the Northwest. When I first looked at it, and including Alaska, we had some places down. They had some placements down into Arizona. But when everything came together for me, they were very strong into social justice types of things. Everything from reservations to inner cities, to villages up here, to
Serving in
cities.
these communities.
Serving in these communities. Fairbanks had a lot of Jesuit volunteers, primarily at Monroe and ICS. It was heavily staffed by them. Out at St. Mary's on the lower Yukon, so we had teachers and everything. So again, I could have waited for my number to be called. I think technically they got to, I believe 92. It was very, very close. I didn't officially get called up, but I had my preliminary notice that, and I had to have the program approved by Selective Service, and they did approve the Jesuit Volunteer Corps as a placement. I wound up going to Seattle, being placed in Seattle, working with Project Equality, which was working with churches throughout the Northwest who were guiding their purchases around companies, large and small, who were involving basically an affirmative action type of thing and trying to branch out and provide services within that realm in both their hiring practices and in their operation. So like a bank, where they would give mortgages. Are they redlining? Are they not? So I got a chance to talk to people and exposures I never had before. So what I should do is go from Seattle. I was there for a year. I eventually became executive director of affirmative action for the Northwest.
Of course you did.
So we were only a two-person, 2.5, place, and when he, I moved up. So yes. Then I went to the JVC, Jesuit Volunteer Corps. I became executive director and moved to Portland and such. But again, getting out to all the volunteer sites.
You had to go to all the sites. Did that bring you to Alaska?
That was my first trip to Alaska.
Oh, wow.
But I was in charge of, one of the big things I did was I placed every single volunteer. So I needed to know where I was putting someone. How do you match, an application with the actual place?
Yeah.
And stuff. So yes, I got to visit every single one.
Yeah. How long was that stint? Was it a 3-year stint, or what do you sign up for when you do that?
So with the JVC, it's 1 year.
Okay.
Typically. I spent 6 years. So a year in Seattle, 3 years as executive director, and then actually the time was, I probably should, I've been volunteering for 4 years, $25, $50 a month,
You were in it for the
things.
big bucks, right?
Right. So I then had an opportunity. One of the priests up here, Jim Sebesta, was serving out in Kaltag on the Middle Yukon and working with the city and stuff. And they wanted someone to come for 2 years to help them understand what it is to be a municipal government and to train someone local to be their city clerk so that they could have control of their affairs and know when somebody came in from the state or the feds and said, oh, well, you need to, well, maybe we do, maybe we don't. Or what is it that we would like? How do we want to shape that? And how do they manage their own affairs?
And this is Kaltag?
This is Kaltag.
Okay.
It's on the Middle Yukon, an Athabascan village. To go there for 2 years, basically work myself out of a job. It was still as a volunteer, or go back to banking. And the way I tend to do things, I want to see my options. And I started talking to banks. The bank that I worked with in New York would take me back in a second. what I loved, they treated me, though I was doing alternate service, the same way as if I had been going into the military service.
Okay.
And they had a job for me when I came back. I also talked to other banks in the Northwest. I had kind of like Seattle, Portland areas to see what was there. Interesting experience, opportunities, banking, going to Kaltag. What do you do? I've been volunteering for 4 years. When do I start? Real life. And several of us went out to a Jesuit retreat house just to hang out. We weren't necessarily doing a retreat per se. We were doing some meetings for the volunteer corps, et cetera. And most of them, all of them slept in the house except for me. I went down on the banks of the Willamette River and put my sleeping bag out, and I slept along the river, along the river. I woke up to the sun in my eyes. The rising sun, call it what you will. I knew then I was going to Alaska.
Now, talk about going back home. When your time at Kaltag wrapped up, you did go back home, but not by any means that most of us would choose.
No, being in Alaska, as they say, Alaska ruins you for the rest of the world.
Yeah.
I just could not quite see going from Kaltag to New York City directly. Although I did take a group of Kaltag students for a leadership program that I taught, and then took them. I had written some grants, and I was able to take a group of 9 back east. But as I was looking, my 2 years were going to be up, and I needed to do something, and I was pretty sure I was going to stay in Alaska eventually, but I wanted some time with my folks, because once I came west again,
How many times are they going to come up to visit?
right, and really had been years since I had been back. So I started gathering things. How do I get there? And I settled on a bike. So I started my $25 a month.
Do you remember what bike it was?
I still have it. It's a Peugeot.
Yeah. Steel frame.
It is. It was a touring bike, not a racing, so that was good. But I started gathering the equipment, the panniers and stuff like that. Essentially, when I left Kaltag, wound up flying to Seattle, going down to REI, walking in, buying the bike, realized that one of the most important pieces of equipment for the bike was the right seat, the saddle. And so I switched that out. I got a special one for that, and which does form to your body and bone structure.
Yeah.
And
so important.
put everything on the bike, went over down to the ferry to Victoria, and started my journey across Canada. And I decided Canada was the way I was going to go, because there was fewer roads to choose from, but also less traffic.
Nice.
And I didn't have to worry about the big highways. Had a wonderful trip for 3 months. Sunday, I took every Sunday off, usually stopped at a church, and most often was able to get inside and get a shower.
Nice.
But people were wonderful in the campgrounds. And then I spent time with my mom and dad. Basically, I kind of consider myself on a sabbatical. The other thing in biking, I wanted time to think about my future. What was I going to do long term? Return to Alaska, finalize that decision in my mind, and what would I move towards? And I decided I really wanted to teach, because Kaltag changed my deal. I ran library programs, Saturday night. I would get film strips from the state library. They would mail them in. I was living in the women's club, which was the cabin they had available. And on the back wall was the library.
A sign saying the library?
Well, no, it was de facto the city library.
There were
it was
books
a wall
there.
of books
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
and stuff. And so I figured I'll do a library hour. So it was a 2-hour deal. We did, I showed films. Absolutely fascinating sometimes when you're running backwards on the old film projector. And then I would tell an hour of stories, made up stories.
Huh.
2 stories a night, one long one short one. Kids said, well, why don't you tell more? And I said, because I only had 200, would it be 208 stories. If I said 2 a night for 2 years,
Yeah.
or 2 a week, I'd run out. The big reason is I couldn't remember the way I told them. I had to say them again.
Yeah.
But that's why I decided to get a teaching.
You
Late
had
bloomer.
a job. You had a job waiting for you in Fairbanks, as I understand it, Tim.
Yes.
But there was also the University of Alaska here. Did you plan when you went back to Fairbanks to start taking classes at the university? How did that work?
Right, they dovetailed well. I had an offer from the Catholic Bishop of Fairbanks for a job, which I started in March. Then I've been gone out of state since from July to March. The bike trip, time with my folks, and then came back as a program developer. So I was writing grants, I was helping planning for organizations and such. But also what that meant is by being in Fairbanks, I could start taking classes at the university. So I was a late bloomer in education. And so I just started taking a class or 2 a semester.
I want to interrupt here, if I might, because given all your leadership positions, it seems natural, your strong suit, and indeed it was eventually as an administrator, as a principal, but also your love of teaching that you discovered in Kaltag. How does that work when you decide to get a Master's of Education, Tim?
Well, that was that was the prompt to go into education.
Yeah.
Okay. They blended because I love administration. I love
You can tell.
I love the global picture
Yeah.
of that. And actually going into education, I knew into administration. So I did my master's as a combination of what I needed to get certified as a teacher, but also everything else I took towards that was in administration. I was overlapping, and then I eventually went on to get my ed specialist in educational leadership as well. But that's where I wanted to go. That's what I wanted to do.
What does teaching offer an administrator?
It's in terms of as a school administrator, understanding. And what kids open doors, I love the fact that this state requires that in order to become certified as an administrator, you have to teach for at least 3 years. Now, circumstances were such that I was able to do administration. I became superintendent of St. Mary's Catholic High School.
Wow.
But I also taught a class. That was my first real education assignment. Then I wound up, actually I met my wife at it who's
I
now
was
my
going to
wife.
ask, yeah. Kate,
That's right. She was a volunteer. She had been teaching in Australia, was coming back to this country and came across a folder, I believe in Australia, about the Jesuit Volunteer Corps.
No
I'm not exactly
way.
where, but she joined JVC, was assigned to teach science, biology at St. Mary's, and I was going out to do some program development. So that's where we met. She had a wonderful Australian accent to me.
Right.
And I thought, oh, my ears picked up, my eyes picked up and stuff. And she has a different story of how it all developed, but we'll see
So
whether we have
surprising,
time.
yeah.
That's right. But I also teased that shortly after we got married, the Australian accent seemed to go away, but that's fine. I got the best. But anyway, I wound up going there. When we left there, and our oldest daughter was born while we were in St. Mary's.
oh, wow.
And we were the first married couple there with a family. So it was very different. I was the first non-Jesuit superintendent of it. But then we looked for teaching jobs, and we wound up going to Bering Straits. And I got a chance to teach full-time in St. Michael. In the high school was my background, social studies, language arts, 7 through 12. And then we moved to Teller, where I became principal, but also had teaching duties.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started to work K-12, or pre-K-12. Then to Unalakleet as principal. And I didn't wind up teaching in a specific class, but I did some independent study for some high school students who needed it for graduation, which was wonderful opportunities, again, keeping my fingers in. But I loved administration. I loved how do we work as a team? How do we build each other's strengths? And then when we left the bush, we spent, almost 12 years in villages in one way or another. I came to the university to teach in their ed leadership program,
Oh, nice.
which was wonderful because it gave me a chance to reflect on what it is to be in ed leadership, being a principal.
There must be a big difference between teaching at that level and teaching when you're an elementary school teacher, or is it?
There is and there isn't. Yes, I mean, what I love and kind of bridging things, I was here at Denali for 23 years as principal.
And this was your
And-
job when you came to Fairbanks after teaching at the U?
No, we moved out of the bush and we really didn't know where we were going to be. When you live in the bush, you teach in the bush, you have to figure, it might take you a year. There were a lot of applicants for positions, so things did not come available. People would sub in Fairbanks for years, hoping for a job to open, teacher. So what we decided, if we didn't have a job for that we would settle in Fairbanks for a year. We could both continue coursework and stuff and do what we needed to do and see where we were going. So in a sense, we came back here for a year, but Fairbanks was where we came for summers. Both my wife and I she worked with Upward Bound at the university. I worked with the Royal Alaska Honors Institute for several summers, and so, or taught classes otherwise. So anyway, that was here. But the job I wound up getting was at the university. They wanted a practicing administrator for their ed leadership program.
Yeah.
Good people there, but
And this allowed
There
you
was
to
a-
reflect on it.
so it gave me a time to reflect.
Yeah.
We were here. Meantime, my wife, we bought a house because there was hardly anything available apartments-wise.
What year was this, Jim?
That was
Because-
1990,
Okay.
and you could count literally on one hand the 2-bedroom apartments
Yeah.
available. So we wound up getting a house, and the day school started, my wife got a call and was offered a job with the district, part-time. I had a job at the university. We said, okay, we're set for the year. We'll see how it plays out. A year later, the principalship at Denali opened. I had interviewed for another school in town that had opened in the fall, and didn't get that one, but I was a finalist. And then Denali opened, and I did get the Denali one.
Wow. And this is 91?
And so that was the 91, fall of 91, and actually my official start date here was January 6th of 92, because I had to finish at the university,
Oh, right.
and they let me out. Although I continued some university classes during the spring in order to help both out.
Yeah. But we should just mention, break in here, the site where we're talking right now is a library here at Denali.
Right.
Was this building here when you began?
No, we were in the old building,
Okay.
which was right just a couple of yards from this one. It was the first neighborhood school in Fairbanks. So Denali is the first neighborhood school to have been built in Fairbanks.
You know, let me take a moment right now to ask you about an element that seems integral to the school, and that's a totem pole that is out in the playground. And that pole was created under your watch, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah. That was a gift to us. And it started with Bert Ryan, who's a Shimshin originally from Metlakatla, lives here in Fairbanks.
A sculptor.
And and he's a carver and such, and his nephew was attending Denali when I started as principal. So that's how I got to know Bert. But Denali has had, from its beginnings, as I've watched and seen and learned, has always had a special feeling of family and camaraderie, whatever you want to call it. And right through today, it's phenomenal. But Bert wanted to give us something because of what he experienced coming to volunteer or visit in the classroom where his nephew was, what he felt his nephew experienced and his nephew's parents. So he gave it a story of love, kindness, and respect. And I think this might have been about 93, something in there. He came to my office. He said, I want to tell you what this place means. And it was love, kindness, and respect. And the story is that the students of Denali share love, kindness, and respect. And the mascot for Denali is a panther. They tell Panther about love, kindness, and respect.
The students.
The students do. Panther tells Raven, who is an important figure in virtually all the indigenous groups
You
in
bet.
Alaska.
Yeah.
So it was
Trickster
broad.
and creator
And how you treat, whatever, messenger and all. So Panther tells Raven about love, kindness, and respect. Raven flies around Fairbanks and shares that message, love, kindness, respect, around the country. spreading that around the globe. And all the way to the universe.
Hmm.
And when new babies come from the universe, they bring the story of love, kindness, respect.
Nice.
When they come to Denali as students, they're bringing that story and they keep sharing it. And the circle continues. So to this day, so we had the story.
Yeah.
Now, what do we do with the story?
Yeah.
How do we
Embody
take
it.
this gift and make it real? Well, it turned out we had an opportunity that a cedar pole had been donated to Denali under its science. We were a science-focused school. People laid that groundwork before I came here. But we had the pole outside. What do you do with this big tree? It was sent up from Thorn Bay,
Yeah.
shipped up on a barge and then
Yeah.
on a truck and got here. But we had not yet, we had thoughts of how to use it, but it turned out to be perfect for a totem pole. Came from Southeast. Again, a gift from a larger community. I was able to come up with some funds, some money, PTA, some grants, the Fairbanks Arts Association, through them, were able to get some money. A small pot, but I asked Bert. I said, Bert, can you do this? I knew he was a carver. Had he done a totem pole? I didn't know. He designed it, came up with the design, panther at the bottom, raven at the top. Kids tell panther, panther tells raven, raven does it. Do we put it out maybe in front as a piece of art? Mm-hmm. No, it doesn't belong there. It belongs with kids. So it's in the middle of the playground. And there were some concerns. Well, if it's out on the playground, it's going to get played with or climbed. It went up in '97. It has been on the playground ever since. And the sixth graders, well, now fifth, but at the time, originally, Bert gave the story to the sixth graders. They were the carvers with him. He was the master carver, but he made them carve.
Chisel. Yeah.
They worked at it. And when anybody came and said, what are you guys doing? He would make the sixth graders tell the story. So
That's
the
so
sixth
wonderful.
graders pass the story on. Now, fifth graders, as the oldest class at Denali, they still pass that story on. They still have the story of love, kindness, and respect, and that's how they operate.
That's lovely. You were how many years here? Several decades.
Basically 23 years.
Yeah. Just quickly, I have to ask, how did education change in that time, Tim? You know, computers came on, but also it seems like how we educate, and it became a kind of a political football, and oftentimes funding, you know, was an issue. How did you see the role of education change in your time as a leader here?
Well, I think that's there were changes and there were not changes, because I think that's important. The role of education, I don't think has changed.
Okay.
In that the essence of it is it's building relationships with kids.
Mm-hmm.
It's helping them, my philosophy, my vision for education that took different forms over decades, but that I settle on, and I want every student to become competent, confident, curious, caring, and a contributing citizen. Arguably, that role has not changed.
Okay.
Okay, and what teachers do, and I brought in that teachers, educators. It's our certified and our classified staff. It's our parents. It's our community members who contribute and work with kids or provide something that gives them support in some way or another, sometimes very clearly, sometimes indirectly, but really important. How they model when the kid goes into the store or whatever, or they're out on a ball field. You know, we do a lot of activities in our community with that sportsmanship. They may use different words, but that's the essence of education. We really want kids to, they're not going to learn everything. They're not going to remember everything.
Right.
But it's also, when you get down to being a citizen, is how do we treat each other? How do we work together?
So these core values have stayed.
Right.
But the means, have they changed?
The means have changed, okay? And when we think of technology, the capabilities of computers, what do you decide is right or wrong? Okay, I mean.
So these are tools, Tim, that can enhance, but it sounds like the core values remain the same.
Exactly.
Well, I'm going to, as we wrap up here, there's a whole section of your education and leadership that we haven't talked about. When you retire, eventually you decide to run for the school board. That must be a whole different perspective. I mean, you've worked with boards in the past, you know how they work. What was it like to actually be on the school board?
Okay, and if I might just back up a tiny bit, when I decided to retire,
Yeah,
literally it was over the weekend, was when I made a decision.
yeah.
I told the
You
superintendent
didn't have
Monday,
to bike through Canada to decide?
you didn't have to do it. It was
Okay.
just, I knew it was right time. I always knew the horizon was coming closer. I didn't know how close. Okay, so, but in deciding that, and because it was the right time for me, for the school, for kids, whatever. But then what do I do? How do I use what I've learned over 35 years, decades? What people taught me. I was a better principal when I retired than when I started. People had approached me about doing some other things, but school board was a natural. I could use my skills, what I knew, what I understood. I knew this district. But it would also push me. So using my skills and what I experienced was one thing, but being pushed not to get stagnant was really important. So professionally, it pushes me.
Sure.
Fellow board members, they have different perspectives.
Yeah, of course.
Different backgrounds. You don't want all Tim Dorans on the board. You know, but for me, I don't want all Tim Dorans around me.
Yeah.
As a staff, I didn't want teachers push me, kids push me.
Yeah.
Think, did you consider this? You know, so it was professionally rewarding to use what I have, professionally rewarding because of the challenges, and also personally, how do I serve the community? I've always looked at what I've done, and I've been so fortunate to do things that are more vocation than a job, more calling, a thing of, you know, I got a lot of it. I can't say, you know, it's selfish.
Yeah.
But, you know, doing things with people, for people, and broader. So it was that opportunity. And could I bring things to the table for a conversation, not to carry the day necessarily, but for conversation that we could all grow from. And so that's why I love being on the board. Organizationally, it's interesting.
Well, you know, I have to just say, you were serving on the board during COVID, which threw everything into turmoil. And it seems like our society's grown more polarized now, so that a question like education has become a hot button issue, where I don't recall it being quite that level.
Mm-hmm.
Does that seem fair to you?
Yes, I think it's fair. We're right in the middle of it.
Right.
That's what schools do.
Right.
We educate. What's interesting in this state, only one person closed schools, and that was the governor. Closed them in March for a couple weeks, then closed them until the end of the school year, and he never reopened them.
Ah,
Okay. Every school district worked towards reopening their schools. Now, we can debate of how it was done, and there were real factors for people.
sure.
Okay.
Yeah, it was quite traumatic.
You know, and I go back to the, was it S1N1? I forget. It was the flu concern in the somewhere around 2007, 2008, and actually our community put together. There was a real concern that this could spread quickly. Our community ran pilots to see how many people they could vaccinate in a matter of hours. And we set up at the Civic Center, you know, they would encourage people to come through,
So a
figure
test
out
run,
how we
yeah.
could do it. It was a test run.
Yeah.
We had plans within our buildings. What if we had a majority of students, or more importantly, a majority of staff out sick? We had parents who said, I don't want to send my kid to school because they might die. And we did have a child in this community die, not actually from the flu, but from complicating things. But it was a real thing. And when this COVID came out, it was like, wow, where's our plan? What are we doing? And so, and there were real health concerns. People were dying in our community, across the nation. Families were being impacted. So you make choices,
Sure.
and those were there. But it became very politicized, and it was tough. But what I will say is, when we closed, there were parades at the end of the school year in neighborhoods
For graduation.
for graduation, for end of year. Kindergarten teachers went, and they met the kids at the end of driveways and did what they would have done had we been in session.
Nice.
The graduations were done one by one. You couldn't have big groups. How do you do that?
Right.
And they personalized it. And in some ways, if you look at the videos of that, they were touching, amazingly
Sure.
done.
Yes, of course.
There was a lot of support for educators and stuff. When, you know, I laugh. My wife and I helped teach our older grandkids. I take credit for teaching them the read. And my wife did, you know, the things, and we shared that. But what I laugh about is, for decades, I've been in and out of classrooms, and I've watched teachers teach. I've watched their strategies. I've watched how they opened doors for kids
Right.
in their learning. I saw really, really good teaching, and now I had to implement that. I had to do it.
Yeah.
And I was pulling
Right,
on these
and yeah,
teachers
where
what
the
they
rubber
taught
meets
me.
the road, as
there,
it were,
right,
yeah.
and stuff. And so I mean, we had lots of parents had insights into it. We also realized why schools are important.
We sure did.
And parents have to go to work.
Yeah.
They're taking care of young kids. How do you do the
Right.
breath? They're taking care of elders, you know. So in some ways,
Tim, are you optimistic after all of this? That's
Yes.
my last question for you. Do you look ahead with optimism?
okay, where the rubber meets the road, right? Yes, I am. We are in a critical state right now. for education, for public education. We have a state and a country, both federal and state administration, do not want to invest in public schools. We will continue to cut and reduce public education services until there are none, unless it changes. But where I am absolutely optimistic about it is, as a school board member, okay, I have a wonderful opportunity. I can go to every school. I can go into classrooms. I said, as a principal, I had the best job in the building. I could walk into any classroom at any time, and I could see kids, I could see teachers, educators in action. As a school board member, I don't walk in any time.
Yeah,
I try and
imagine
say,
not.
hey, you know, this is a good time to visit or whatever. But I get out to every single school, and I've been going to schools, and one of the things that really has hit me very recently is that there's a lot of noise about education, a lot of critique about education, a lot of it misinformed. And what I see in schools, I'm walking through, standing in the hallways, walking in the hallways, there's a calm. You walk in school, there's a laughter. There's purpose in the classroom. And I go into classrooms.
So they're still vital. They're
They
still
are
engaged.
vital, and teachers and principals, support staff are focused on the kids. They are doing good work.
That you're heartened heartens me, Tim. So, because your vast experience and your position right now on the school board, I mean, tells me if you have optimism and you have faith in those core values you outlined, then that's heartening. That's good. And I can't thank you enough, Tim Doran. Thank you so much for taking time today to talk with me.
My pleasure. Who is that guy?
Yeah. Well, about this time, when we do this, it's an opportunity for many of you who know Tim to pose a question or share a memory. Well, we got a hand right away.
What's with the tie cutting?
Okay.
Okay, the tie cutting.
The tie cutting. Do I need this?
Let's see if you're.
Is my mic picking up? Okay.
Go ahead.
So the tie cutting is, it's really important to get feedback from parents. And so every year it was at Denali, the district has a parent opinion survey. And a lot of times it doesn't come back. So I had to come up with something, some incentive to get it back. And I'll tell you, over the 23 years of doing it, we had 80% return average, sometimes higher. It was 75 to 85%. And so it was really important that we get those back. How are we doing? What can we do better? And what I loved is over the years, the written comments far exceeded, and went into the 450, 500 written comments of things. But the tie was the top 3 classes for returns would get to cut one of my ties. Okay. Now my wife loved to see ties go away. Now I don't think she's listening right now, but I will tell you the same story I told the kids, that every time they got to cut a tie, I had a chance to go buy a new one. So the idea was, so I do 3 to, sometimes we had ties in the top 3, so I might lose 5 or 6 ties, but every kid got a piece of the tie. They got to cut it themselves. There were certain rules that I learned from a kindergartner rule number one, if I say stop cutting, stop. Okay? I still have a scar on one knuckle. Where you don't want to yell at a kindergartner, stop, please stop. Wait. So anyway, that became rule number one. Also, I didn't want them to cut my beard. Okay. And certainly if they cut my throat, if they were up close, and I couldn't really see what they were doing, is you don't want to cut my throat because it really gets messy. So, but that's the story of the ties, and as I said, I always got plenty of returns, 80% return ever.
We have one.
So I'm trying to remember back to this year. I'm administrator in the school district. It's 2010 or so. You're principal for Denali, and it's No Child Left Behind years. The years of adequate yearly progress with a goal of reaching 100% proficient for every single student in reading, writing, and math. And Denali was in the third or fourth year of not making AYP. We were in the meetings talking about it, and you're talking to me about growth and how important that is of tracking how students are growing, and you and I are on the same page on that. And then the Every Student Succeeds Act comes out, and growth becomes a new component in accountability. And Denali goes from a school not making AYP to a 4-star rated school on a 5-star rating scale. And I'm just curious about your thoughts around, because legislature talks about it, this language comes out a lot about accountability. And what does that really mean? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm not even going to try to summarize all that, Tim. So, but talk about accountability, maybe.
Okay. All right, and I won't give, Ellis and I have had hour-long conversations. We won't do that today. Sort of a short version of it, and I think it is really important. When we talk about accountability for what schools do with students, and it's in my wrap-up comment there, why I'm so hard when I watch teachers and kids and what they're doing today, right now, they are learning, and they're teaching and they're learning together. When we look at accountability, and Denali, a friend of mine actually framed it up on a, I can't remember, it was about 2010 or somewhere in there, front page of the Daily News Miner, above the fold, large letters, portrait of a failing school. Sunday headline. Picture of me and some kids. It was all about Denali. We were arguably the most failing school in Fairbanks, because we had missed adequate yearly progress on your No Child Left Behind, passed in 2003, which, as Alice said, the goal was 100% at a given moment for every single kid. Okay. But our staff never stopped. Our parents never stopped. Our kids never stopped. And they kept learning. And it was actually one of the days I called Ellis, who monitors our assessment and progress accountability broadly for the district, because I had gone through one of our test results, and in lower socioeconomic, we missed in the area of language arts. As I went down, out of the 32 categories, we missed one that particular year, and that was typical. We missed one in some area, and as long as you missed one area, you were non-compliant. And I had a story. There were 99 kids in that group. I could tell a story that absolutely struck me, of every one of the kids who had moved forward on their writing, who did not test well, but who, and I'm thinking of this one class in particular, 6th grade, Doug Minn's class, I'd walk in and they'd be writing, and a kid would run up and show me what they were writing. And as the year went on, they would run up, show me what they were writing, and they said, but hurry up and read it. I have more to do. Okay. So I think knowing those things, and what Alice is referring to is, yes, when they factored growth in, okay, that particular year, we had achieved 93% out of 100, or 93 points out of 100 on the thing. That's how our kids did growth. And that's the thing we focused on and our staff did. We knew every student, and we had the documentation of the students making growth each year, and then certainly over the 7 years that they could possibly with. But many kids, we only had a few days. And our motto and effort as teachers, and a couple of you are here, was that it didn't matter how long a student was with you, you offered them the best that you could. That's 3 days, it's 3 months, 3 years, or the full 7 years, didn't matter. So that was the thing that we had to keep fighting against. There's the numbers, but we look at the kids. Were we making progress? Were they making progress? And so therefore, that's where we were. And another time we'll really talk about assessments. But it's really important to know are they the right numbers, the right measurement, but most importantly, are the kids making progress, not on the test at a particular moment, but over time and on multiple levels. And some of it is, forget, how are they handling situations? Many of our kids come from a variety of experiences and stuff. And there are things that sometimes they need to do, visit grandparents. And maybe gone for a little bit. How can we build on that? How do they help each other on the playground? And I'll end that answer with this. The biggest measurements is when I walk into the store and somebody's taking care of me. When I pick up the phone and say, hey, I need help on the furnace. Oh, hi, Mr. Doran, you remember me? Or you're on the playground and they're taking care of their kids. And those are the measurements of who you are. And I just need to brag a little bit about our kids right now.
Okay.
Okay. I had an opportunity to go to 6 of the graduations this year. Last year, same thing. The students, as they spoke, they talked about the relationships they built among themselves. They were all students, class last year, who had started remote, who got to know themselves. They said, really, we started really getting to know each other in junior year. And building the relationships and taking that from where they were going. They were not your stereotypical student valedictorian, salutatorian speech. This year, the question that happened to show up at every graduation I was at was not the question, what are you going to do after graduation? Who are you going to be? And I thought, wow, what insight and depth for kids, especially over time, as they build towards that. They're graduating from high school. Who are you going to be? And they raise that question and talk to each other about what that meant.
How about one more question? Don?
After you finished teaching and being a principal, you joined the Peace Corps and went to the South Pacific. What did you find there that was so similar to ours or different from ours and your experience there?
Peace Corps experience after you retired.
Can I blame this on my wife? For several years before retirement, she would send me emails about, just saying, by the way, we're going to do something after retirement. Okay? She even had some of her high school students send me emails. Oh, what are you going to do? Oh, did you know about this? So that led to both of us joining Peace Corps. I retired in 2014, he retired in 2015, and then we joined Peace Corps Response. It's for older experience. The idea was you were experienced, you knew what you were doing, So that takes a lot of leap of faith. But the idea is you went to a specific position. You applied for a position. Peace Corps response then would send to the country that wanted somebody to come to help them with a certain thing. Again, basically working ourselves out of jobs. So long story short, we wound up going to Palau, the Republic of Palau. It's in the Western Pacific, 600 miles beyond Guam and 800 miles to the Philippines, a small island country. Kate worked in professional teacher development and curriculum development, and I was asked to help them develop their national master plan for education. They do a 10-year plan. And so it was an opportunity to go there, work, again, got to visit every school, go in and out of classrooms, talk to educators, talk to teachers. But they wanted somebody, they decided for their strategic planning, they wanted somebody who is not Palau, who's off island, because everyone is related. And they were afraid that if they did it in-house, someone might not say something because they might offend them. Okay, and their cousins are related in some way or other. There are only 22,000 citizens of Palau. So I was an outsider. I figured I could ask any stupid question and wouldn't offend anybody too badly because what's he gonna know? But it was their plan, and I just learned so many things. And it was having conversations on the beach. And I remember we were at the beach one day, and there was a family playing, and we started talking to a fourth grade girl. She talked to us in English, and then she turned around to say something to her dad in Palauan, because he was Palauan. And then she started talking to her mother in Tagalog, because she was Filipino. Fourth grade. Okay. A high school student who, there was an activity going on, and another volunteer actually from Japan who was there, and it was food agriculture type of deal, and she greeted us, this young high school girl had greeted us in English, and we were talking fine, and then this other woman came and joined us, and they were talking, and the high schooler said, would it be more comfortable if we talked in Japanese? Because that was her language. So learning those types of things, and just, I mean, there were so many things. It's always a learning curve. And I'm just going to end, if I can, all these experiences are still learning. I'm learning right now. I am thrilled. I was accepted as a fellow this year. The school board partners, and they have a cohort of 75 school board members from around the country. I will say, I think I'm the oldest in the group. Many of them are quite new at it, and some new graduates, etc. But what's great is, as part of the program, I also get a mentor. And, I had to say, what did I want to learn? What do I want to mentor for? Because this is a learning process. And as a school board member even, it's still learning. And it's fun. So I'm thrilled at having this. He'll give me some insights. Give me a school board meeting I should watch. And then they'll give me feedback on me. The point is me. So it's learning, and that's the thing that kids do. And I really have to give great kudos. I was thinking, I talked about people who have an impact in my life, and it's really everyone in here in the room. But I do look at my wife taught longer than I have. I learned a lot of things from her when I went to teaching. You know, her daughters, her grandkids are here, you know, learning from them. But that's the thing, so I'm still, and Robert has put me on the spot several times, so I'm still learning.
So that means we have cake and ice cream, and you can school Tim with some refreshments. But another round of applause for Tim Doran. Thank you, Tim.